Hi, welcome back to Moonbeaming, a space where we discuss the mundane and the magical, the material and the etheric, the conscious and the unconscious, and give you a brilliant, intuitive, sensitive, empowered, creative, visionary tools, tactics, frameworks, and practices to help you navigate your life and thrive as your amazing self. Yes, you. Yeah, you. I am your host, Sarah Faith Gottesdiener. And since 2014, no, never mind. Math and numbers and time. What are those things? Since 2004, tarot has been in my life as a helper, a friend, a guide, and mirror. After being a scholar of the tarot and studying it for about 7 years, learning about it, giving free readings, being minorly obsessed with it, I was a professional tarot reader. I was a psychic, a channel for clients. Sometimes I would channel dead people. Sometimes I would channel spirit guides. Sometimes I just was hella psychic. I did that for about 7 years. And now I will teach about the tarot, about esoteric stuff, but also about life skills stuff, because that's what we need to navigate reality. Recently, I read a book. It was someone talking about their life, and the author was describing the way he felt the first time he bought a computer and learned to program it in the late 80s, like early 90s. He said he couldn't comprehend how or why, but when he was introduced to the computer and coding it and programming it, even back in the day, he bought it at Radio Shack. Many of you probably have no idea what that is, but here we are. He just got it. It didn't require any schooling or formal training. It felt like a language he intrinsically understood. Honestly, that's how I feel about the tarot. There was nothing else other than art and reading and language and nature and energy and psychic stuff. Those things, feelings, emotions, those are all the things that just felt so easy and so like no barriers to being with. And quite frankly, that's why I've never taught a 101 class, like how to read the tarot, because I didn't learn tarot in a linear way. I didn't learn it by reading books. I learned it by being with the cards and by giving readings to myself, journaling about them, giving readings to others, listening to what was happening, like what people were saying, like a lot of field research. I learned it by being with the cards, listening to the tarot, as well as living the tarot, because tarot is a reflection of our lives, and tarot can help us live our lives by affirming our intuition, predicting future roads, giving us potential outcomes we might not have been brave enough or open enough to pay attention to. And also by bringing to our consciousness things we might not have considered, Like I always ask the cards, or when I go to a reading from someone else, I always say, I want you to tell me something I couldn't figure out on my own. Tell me something I don't know or don't have access to. And I think that's a really great way to approach the cards if you're open enough to receive it. And of course, you know why I am talking tarot. And that's because today is a teaching episode. Teaching episodes are where I go deep on a concept, framework, process, archetype, tarot card. And it's a little taste of what it is like to learn with me when you sign up for one of the Moon Studios workshops, or when you purchase one of the Moon Studios workbooks or downloads. This is like an appetizer, an hors d'oeuvre, an amuse-bouche of what learning with me is like. It's also a place, I think I've said this before on the pod, so bear with me. This is the only place I can put what I know after being with the cards for so long. Like, I can't really put this into a workshop. You know what I mean? Like, where else can I talk about everything or some of the things I know about a tarot card? A podcast. It's like podcasts were invented for me and for this. It's so great. Here we are. Speaking of learning, loving, living, this month there is one opportunity to learn, live, love with me in a workshop on July 13th called How to Feel Your Feelings. You can learn more by clicking the show notes, subscribing to our newsletter, or following the Moon Studio on Instagram. How to Feel Your Feelings is for those who are curious about some ways to think about, frame our feelings, approach our feelings, be with our feelings, make space for our feelings, interpret our feelings, how to stop feeling shame or judgment about our feelings, aka uncoupling from shame, aka inner child healing, aka reparenting, aka rewiring our patterns and the ways we relate to ourselves. We'll dive into the symbology of our emotions, the sensations of our emotions, and we'll practice alchemizing our feelings and utilizing our feelings to help us move forward, to manifest, to human fest, to make ourselves portals of what we want to experience next. It's going to be fun. Anyone who knows me knows I've got a lot of feelings. I've worked with them over the years to both tend to them, love them, hold space for them so that I can create my dream life, so I can hold space for others and their feelings, which is part of one of my jobs. I'm not afraid of feelings. I'm not afraid of your feelings. So if you know this is for you, join us. And if you're listening to this and it's February of 2029, this will most likely be offered as a download you can get at any time by going to the moon-studio.co, moonstudio.co. That's moon-studio.co. If you have been paying attention to what I have been talking about so far, you already know what card we're diving into today, or you know the suit we're diving into today. That's right. We're talking about the cups, in particular, the 7 of cups. Can you tell I had a matcha past my matcha bedtime? My matcha bedtime is 3 p.m. Gentle listener, I had a matcha 3:45, finished my last sip, maybe even like 4:10, and it's the end of the day. So she's kicking in. I may not get to bed until midnight tonight. I'm a little punchy. I'm in a good mood. I'm in a matcha mood. So bear with me. But I needed it to do this card. You know, every year I set us all up by going over the card of the year, the shadows of the card of the year, the teacher card of the card of the year. Then I shift into the minors, the cards that correlate also with our year. Last week, I did a deep dive into the 7s because I wanted everyone to understand the aspects of tarot that are numerologically based. And this week, we're going to get into a card. I think I'm going to say this again, but I'll say it here now. The way that I teach and the way that makes it really easy for anyone to know what a minor card means is we think about the energies of the number and the themes of the number as set forth by the major arcana number. So chariot themes. Then we think about the element and the themes of the element. So that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to start off with some of the keywords of this card. This is a mix of traditional keywords and also my own keywords. We've got the power of imagination, fantasies, dreams, daydreams, an embarrassment of riches, poison as medicine, medicine as poison, the drama of the gifted child, delusion, confusion, indecision, subconscious repatterning, gifts from the psyche, emotional manipulation, weaponized emotions, emotional repatterning, emotional restraint, avoidance, the unknown, the infinite field, disorganization, projections, wishes, wishful thinkings, too many options, jumping to conclusions, inebriation, and being misled. Fantasies are great, and also they can keep us stuck. It's that person who keeps saying they'll do something, and it doesn't happen. Or you think, oh, I gotta call that friend, and then it becomes a whole thing. And it's 3 months later and you haven't called the friend, right? Or you keep saying, I really want to be in a band. You dream about it. You listen to other people's music. You think about what you could make that sounds like it, but you never pick up a guitar. You never learn the scales. Fantasies can be great because they point us to what we want, but they can also, with repeated time, take the place of what we want. So be careful that your fantasy, replaying that fantasy in your mind and experiencing it as if it were real, be careful when it stops you from taking what you want into the material. Or maybe you don't actually want it. Maybe you don't actually want to be a guitarist. Maybe you actually don't like playing the guitar. You just like the idea. And that's also what this card points to. If you like the idea of being in a band, but you don't actually want to learn the scales or get calluses on your very, very, very tender, sensitive fingertips, maybe you want camaraderie. Maybe you want like a friend group that is really focused on one thing. Maybe you want to be adored and looked at and applauded, right? You can look at the symbolism of your fantasies often to give you more information about you really want, to give you more information about what you really want. The Thoth deck calls this card debauch, which also means emotional indulgence, depression, addiction, feeling overly sorry for yourself, really holding on to the victim or martyr archetype, not dealing with reality, making your reality an escape hatch, aka sort of stagnant, right? Of course, there then can become snags, hooks, which of course means that there is now the opportunity to get out of them. Going back to the elemental framework, let's think about the themes of the 7 plus the element, which is water. And in this archetype, this is an unusual form of water. It can be paradoxical, like mist or fog. The other image I got while meditating on this card is the cloud. The cloud is very paradoxical. First, we think of clouds as air, but it's filled with water droplets that are suspended in air. It appears to be weightless, but the average weight of a cloud is 1,400,000,000 pounds. And we know that emotions can feel like that sometimes, right? They're invisible. They're happening below the surface, inside. We can't always explain them. They come in fast and furious and sometimes feel like crashing waves of the ocean or nebulous, or they roll in slowly like the fog. And before we are even aware of them, whoosh, they've taken over and they're influencing us in ways we might not even know until it's over. And that's what this card can reflect back at us, a state of confusion, a non-reality created by memories or deep, delirious, ravenous emotions, or a mysterious wave of feelings or impossible feelings, the kinds that defy categorization or even resolution. The planet I immediately thought of with the Seven of Cups is Neptune. The pink cloud of it, the slipperiness, the sea foam frothiness of Neptune, which is this dreamy, fantastical planet, and also it being a watery sign, an emotional sign like Pisces or Cancer, or again, this like this tenseness of, say, like Neptune in a sign where it might not make sense, like Neptune in Capricorn or Neptune in Aquarius. Because often when we receive this card, we're trying to make sense of something and we just can't, or we're not supposed to. I've seen some old school astrological associations of the Seven of Cups be Pisces. In the order of the Golden Dawn, the card is said to be associated with the third decan of Scorpio. And the Hermetic interpretation of the Seven of Cups, similar to the Thoth deck, is Lord of Debauch or illusory success, which we'll get into later because we talk about mimetic desire. So, what are some of the basics when you get this card and you're like, what is going on? We talked about in the last episode, we talked about the sevens being crossroads energy, pattern changing potentials. It's that zone of, okay, you've normally done this thing, you've made decisions from this space, or you have this fear-based pattern or this belief due to ancestry or society. Okay, well, in some way, somewhere, it might be time to change, to question, to try things differently. And so there's this opportunity. There's maybe a recovery, perhaps a timeline jump, another reality available, new energy also available to you now. It sounds so easy, this advice, like stop doing shit that makes you unhappy, or stop doing things just because it's the way you've always done them. That sounds so easy, right? It's really hard. If it was more easy, more people would do it. If it were easy, more people would mix stuff up more frequently, not out of a trauma response or out of a flight response or an avoidance response, right? Because we talked about this, the sevens being about catching up to who you are now in current time, what you want to experience, who you want to be, and becoming that person through different acts. Remember we talked about last week about the sevens being about individuation? This card is about the potentials of emotional alchemy, the potentials of a sustained imagination and a dreaming practice, one that has the ability to change our brains, our hearts, our minds, our lives in the tangible world. And ultimately, as we experience it in the 8 and the 9 of Cups. We see in the 8 and 9 of Cups a kind of emotional maturity. When we say goodbye to the tantrums and emotional addictions and have the capacity and space to rebirth ourselves, which I associate with the 9 of Cups. But I'm getting ahead of myself as usual. First, we have to be in the confusion or manipulation or immaturity or delusion, or at the very least be put in situations where we're forced to look at or have a mirror held up to us around some of the ways we cope instead of confront. So when you get this card, you might want to ask yourself, what is fantasy and what is reality? Are you being controlled by potential in another person or certain situation? Are you being controlled by past emotions that are simply a pattern, keeping you stuck, keeping you scared, keeping you thinking the same thoughts and doing the same things. If you think, if only I could do this or that, and the desire to do all the things leaves you overwhelmed and then doing nothing, then what good is your desire? We have to accept reality while also turning towards what is, what we would like, what could be. There's this great quote by Bell Hooks. To be truly visionary, we have to root our imagination in our concrete reality while simultaneously imagining possibilities beyond that reality. And then, of course, that makes me think of the idea from Adrienne Marie Brown, who is quoting someone else. Forgive me for not remembering this, but in Emergent Strategy, she brings up this idea that is this great remembering for us with the Seven of Cups, which is the idea of the imagination battle. The idea that if we slip into default, our reality has been determined by a specific group of people. We're living in someone else's imagination, right? What someone says that femininity is, like what some old white guy from hundreds of years ago or even thousands of years ago, I'm thinking of the Roman Empire, says what we are based on ... what love is, what relationships are, what anything is, and being trapped there, that's a tragedy, and that's what witches, visionaries, entrepreneurs, activists, archivists, researchers, some parents, social workers, teachers, professors, did I say artists? Probably. Creatives. That's what they're doing. They're saying, it's anyone saying, okay, I see what is going on and I have hope. I am going to live in that hope and I'm going to make work I want to see in the world. I'm going to live in accordance with my values, even when it's hard. I'm going to try as best as I can, understanding the limits of reality. I'm still going to try to live in my own imagination. So when you get this card, you can ask yourself, am I ready to live more in my imagination? Am I ready to bring my imagination into reality? Am I going to be vulnerable enough to see what's in my imagination and vulnerable and risky enough to bring some of my imaginal selves into the material? And can I be okay when reality doesn't quite match up or when it's hard to stick to what I want to see more of? This definitely feels like a patron saint of artists and dreamers and visionaries, because what artist can say that their outcome matches the vision? I mean, some I'm sure can say, but often there's usually a reaching, a trying, a stretching towards, like a plant stretching towards the sun, that anyone trying to build a world or like design a graphic is doing. So if this card comes up for you, maybe it's time to see what has to be examined or shifted in your creative practice. Maybe even lower the bar so there can be some kind of satisfaction experienced. Or it could be time to look at what you think you're trying to get out of your practice that is making you feel not so great. I've spoken about this before with the ruler. I hate that word, but the, major arcana associated with the sevens, the chariot. And that is putting the cart before the horse. There reaches a point where we have to fall back in love with the process, or fall back in love with ourselves, or fall back in love with our lives. This is how this card can be a warning to recenter, to stop grasping and looking outwards, even for a week or a month or however long. especially when it comes to love. If we think that by doing things a certain way, we'll get love, then we come to rely on those things or a certain identity, a certain behavior as meaning if we do this thing, we'll be loved or lovable. This card is a sign to pause and step off that hamster wheel. In the old school tarot world, there is love and relationships with this suit. We know it tracks as water. The element of the card bonds. That's what water does. Matters of the heart show up in the cups, as do our relationships with ourselves, with God, with Goddess, with our beloveds. And really, I would say any relationship where you're supposed to learn something important. Any relationship that changes you is the domain of the cups and, of course, other tarot cards. Like we see it in all of the other suits. Why? Because we are not islands, gentle listener. We are shaped by relationship and by community, and we shape others. It's what being a human is about. With this card, there's also this other extreme of like having rose-colored glasses that are a bit too rosy. Parasocial relationships, cheating, narcissists, substance abuse, infringing on the relationship in some way. And or people that are misleading. Maybe they activate something really raw in you or patterned in you, like going after unavailable or emotionally avoidant people. I know this sounds random, thought I should share. I think of this one time I had a one-night stand in France, and part of why, or maybe the reason why it was so enjoyable is that we both knew that was it. Neither one of us were forcing or like putting anything on the moment. And because of that, it felt really beautiful and like resolved. And I could be more in the present moment because I wasn't expecting to hear from this person or have a relationship with them or move to France, you know? The gifts of being present, right? When this card comes up, you may want to ask yourself, where are you wanting to move to France? Like, it was just an email, just like a one-night stand. Or, you know, where are you being emotionally overdramatic or projecting? Can you let things be what they are? Is emotional immaturity or one of your deep, 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 deep needs creating conflict or drama where there doesn't have to be any? Are you listening to what the person is saying and paying attention to their actions IRL? Or is there a whole entire fantasy that you are creating about them in your head that will end poorly in no uncertain terms? In certain moments, we'll attach where we aren't supposed to, you know? Chasing a high, an addiction, an escape route, using substances in a way that is taking us away from the present moment, food, screens, sex, sugar, workaholism, whatever your choice is that takes you out of reality and presence and being in your body with presence. Or even these things we do that manufactures a physiological response that you enjoy, that you might be able to achieve in a healthier way, like subbing, scrolling for yoga nidra, or just a nap, right? Or just laying down with your feet up against the wall, right? Simple. We can do that with anything, of course, including health and wellness, like when healing becomes an obsession, or a way to take us out of our lives, or a way to stop us from not moving forward. This idea that we have to be healed completely in order to do the thing or be in the relationship. We know that's not the case. And we certainly can retreat into the occult or astrology to help us make decisions. And the Seven of Cups is this gentle or not so gentle reminder to like put the cards down, especially if this is the third time you've drawn the Seven of Cups in like a week, or if you keep drawing cards over and over or delving deeper and deeper into your astrology chart, getting too many readings instead of making a decision for yourself. There's this idea that there are no good or bad cards. And that's totally true because A, we never want a piece of paper to control our lives. Like, no, we don't want that. And two, nothing in life, not one thing, is all bad or all good. Hello, yes, we know that. And sometimes it's a good idea to let cards be warnings if that aligns with your gut, with your intuition. This is a card that means that, number one, it might not be the best time to make a big decision. You might want to wait for more answers. You might want to gather more information or to get into a state of more clarity instead of reacting or feeling like you have to settle or do the thing you've always done. On that tip, a lot of us like to wait for signs before we move forward with something. We like to wait for clarity or from outside nudges from the universe. I totally get it. I do that too. And also, sometimes we need to take one step towards our future in order for our future to take one step towards us. Sometimes we are the sign. Okay, I am going to leave that there for this week. Patrons, I have my own personal interpretations through working with this card that I am going to be talking about in our Patreon just for you. I have so much more to say about this card, the magic, the potentials, the inside scoop, as it were, about the Seven of Cups. This is a great primer for the Seven of Cups, but now I'm ready to go deep and I will see you in the Patreon. If you want to go a lot deeper, Sarah style, you can sign up for our Patreon. The link is in the show notes. It's a super fun place. There are lots of fun things going on. It's a very kind and loving and very sweet, wonderful community of people. I love all of you. I love getting to share with you. So if you want to go deeper, you can sign up. If you want to know all about the Seven of Cups and get a ton of other secret episodes, join us. I wanted to end with some journaling prompts to think about if you receive the Seven of Cups or you find yourself navigating challenging emotions. Here goes. What was the last fantasy I had, and how do I think it's related to current wants, desires, or needs? How might I be tricking or deluding myself currently? What activities feel good in my heart? Can I do them? Do I want it because I think I should want it? Or do I really want it? When was the last time I used my pure, unencumbered imagination? What came up? What haven't I let myself yet try? What reoccurring dreams and fantasies keep appearing? And how can I take one small step towards bringing them into reality. Just some questions to think about. They're probably tracking with you whether or not you pulled this card. I'm sending you lots of love, and I'll see you really soon. Bye for now.